Hi everybody, thank you for coming to the 5th Annual Speech Showcase. We're so happy that all of you guys could make it. Our top 10 contestants have worked very hard to make these speeches great for you guys. So can we give them a round of applause for all their hard work? Before we get started, I have a few announcements and recognition things. So can you guys all make sure that your ringers are off on your phones, please? I don't want them to go off and distract the contestants at all. You guys are more than welcome to take videos and take pictures of your loved ones or the people up here. Just make sure your flash is off. We don't want to distract them more than we have to. And then, what else was it? If you have to leave for any reason, please do it in between speeches, so that way it's not distracting to them again. And so now I'd like to thank our 6 judges so much for all their hard work tonight and coming out. Our first one is Trula Mullins. Amy Fritch. Skyheart Antis. Allie Legg. Austin Majors. And Dr. Atara McNamara. Okay. And I'd also like to recognize the Merrill brothers. I only know one of you could be here, but can you please stand? Thank you. So this is one of our club founders, and he founded the club years ago and started this event. So thank you so much for creating such an awesome event. I'd also like to recognize Fiddler's Coffee for donating. There's 2 things of coffee outside. One's regular, one's decaf. They donated that for our event. So thank you to Fiddler's. Another honored guest who could not be here tonight was Tim Browning, a local business owner, former college alumni, and debate person. So he is a very generous sponsor of the showcase, and he's great at helping us out every year. So I'd like to also give him a round of applause, even though he couldn't be here. All right, and with that, I'd like to welcome our 2 announcers for the night, Cheyenne Meyer and Paul Croft.
Okay, so my name is Cheyenne Meyer, and I am the 2018-2019 Speech Club President.
I'm Paul Croft, and I'm the Special Events Coordinator for Speech Club.
And so we're going to be talking about some heavy topics tonight, some controversial topics. So we threw in trivia throughout the event to lighten up the mood, so we're going to start with that. So this is the only time I ask you to please take out your phone. We're going to be playing Kahoot, and I will explain Kahoot once everyone has pulled out their phones. Okay, so once everyone has their phones, you're going to be going to kahoot.it. So it's KAHOOT.it. So once you pull that up, you'll see you have to enter a game pin, and in a moment we'll have the game pin on the screen. So how this works is you'll see a trivia question on the screen, and I'll read off the question, and then there will be 4 answers, and you have to select an answer that corresponds to the screen. And if you click the button the fastest, if you get the answer right, you get the most points. And by tonight, the team or the person with the most points gets a $10 Fiddler's gift card. And then also, you're going to be creating a team name, so please keep it appropriate. We can delete names, so just, if you want to go by like Batman, that's fine, just keep it appropriate, we ask. Well, it'll be up on the screen once we figure it out. It's our first time doing it, so we're trying something new here.
I'm going to go see what the problem is.
We had it working during rehearsals, so. It should be on. I don't know. We're trying to figure it out.
So really quick, while we're having some technical difficulties, if there are any Centralia College staff or alumni, we'd like to stand and recognize you as well. Or you guys to stand, not us to stand, sorry. So if you guys want to stand, we'd love to recognize you, any alumni or
Our staff. Yep.
staff. We'd also like to give another thank you to Tony Petzel back there. He's our IT guy, and he's helping us with the sound and everything. This is our first year in the big theater, and so he's been very patient with us figuring out what type of mics to use, you know, different shoes, different this, different that, and so many little things that we didn't even think about. So I'd also like to give him and his crew a hand as well.
Okay, so turns out our projector does not like us this evening, and it stopped working altogether. So I will figure out what we're going to do for our trivia, but we're going to go ahead and dive into our first speaker.
A fun fact about our first speaker, she once got a spoon stuck to her lip, and eventually they had to cut her lip to get the spoon off. And also, she did not want to be first under any circumstance, but when we spun the wheel, she was to select the speaking order, she was selected first.
So with that, please give a warm welcome to Casey Emery.
I want you guys to go back to a time when you were in school and you had a health checkup. What was that like? You got tested for your height, your weight, your sight, and your hearing. I even got tested for my speech impediment. But I never remember a time when I was tested for my mental wellness. And I don't think any of you ever had either. I'm here today to talk to you and persuade you why we need mandatory mental health checkups in our schools. My three main reasons are that it will reduce suicides, it will minimize school shootings, and all children can benefit. Let's move on to my first main topic. It will reduce suicides. When I was a sophomore in high school, I went through a really rough patch in my life. I was really depressed and I wasn't mentally well. My friends at that time, they went and talked to my school counselor. And my school counselor then brought me in. And from there, I went to a mental health specialist at my school, free of my charge. And it really did help. I got the help that I needed, and I got the help that was going to help me. Not all schools have this, but all schools need this. The second leading cause of death of ages from 10 to 34 is suicide, while the first is unintentional accidents. I think that having suicide as the second leading cause of death is just horrible. and it should be nowhere near the top 10. With mandatory mental health checkups, we can reduce that because students can get the help that they need. And this brings me to my second main point. It can minimize school shootings. Children who are at risk of shooting up a school or even just school violence need help. They need the help that schools don't provide today. They need somebody to say, hey, it's okay, the world is not on your shoulders. But they don't have that at the moment because schools don't implement that. A website called the Citizens Commission on Human Rights had an article called The Real Cause Behind School Shootings. In that article, it states that they did find fewer school shootings occurred in places with mandatory background checks and higher spending on health education. I think if we just pool money together to spend on something that's a desperate need, we can save lives. And this brings me to my third main point, that all children can benefit. Now, these children, not everybody is at risk, but every child can benefit from having a person that they can talk to, a person that they can go to who they know won't judge them, but who will actually help them in what they need. These people, these mental health liaisons, are trained specialists. Yeah, we have school counselors, but they're not always trained in that. If we could pool money together, then we can have the help. The SOS Programs website, Signs of Suicide Programs, they provide a program that goes to schools to give these schools the help that they need. They implement a 20-minute video and then a 20-minute discussion. And then after that, they have a questionnaire. And this questionnaire can identify children who are at risk and who need help. And from there, the school can implement and help those children so that they don't feel like the weight of the world is on their shoulders and that they don't have to hurt themselves or anybody else in the world because they have an outlet. My opposing viewpoint, it costs schools money. Yeah, it does. And inevitably, it costs us taxpayers money. The Signs of Suicide program costs $459 for a school to implement. Just a one-time implement, but you can do an increment, so you can hit the entire school. You can get to everybody. $459. That will never amount to a loss of a child's life. No money will ever amount to a loss of a child's life or multiple children's lives. So let's recap. Mandatory mental health checkups in schools can reduce suicides, can minimize school shootings, and all children can benefit. My purpose here today was to persuade you on why we need mandatory mental health checkups in our schools. And my call to action is I want you guys, all of you, to go to your local school district and to tell them and just talk to them about implementing these mandatory mental health checkups in your schools today. Go and just talk, have a discussion, so that these kids, the kids that are in our community, in our lives, can get the help that they need. And with that, I thank you.
All right, so since our technology is not working, we're doing a little bit improvising, and we have speech club members that are helping, and what we're going to be doing instead is telling embarrassing stories about ourselves. It's actually an assignment from Jeff that we had to do, and so here we are throwing this in, hoping to lighten the mood. So our first speech club member is Sheila, and let's please give her a round of applause.
Hi, does it work? Yeah. My name is Sheila Johnson. This is my first year in speech club. I took Jeff's class in the fall this year, and it was just something that I really enjoyed and wanted to be a part of. So, I'm going to give a part of my freaky culture speech for you. So, my freaky culture is with a part of my friends. What we like to do is we like to eat bread, and we have centered a lot of our time and passion on bread. So if one person goes to Safeway or Walmart, they will get a loaf of bread, and then they'll bring it to school, and everyone will have a piece of bread. And they'll be ripping pieces out of it. The bread will be gone, like that. We've had chats about the importance of bread. Whenever we're together, we're like, we need to go get some bread. So that's just something that was really important to us. And with that, I thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. And
All right.
who's on?
Why? It's working. All right, whatever. Okay. Fun fact about our next speaker, he's very involved on campus. He is one of the 4 student ambassadors this school year, and he is president of Students for Life.
So everyone, please welcome Simon Stair.
The prolific 20th century writer, G.K. Chesterton, once said, "Do not be so open-minded that your brains fall out." These words remind us of the fact that today in America, we tend to value being open-minded and being tolerant of other people's ideas, opinions, and actions. However, I'm on stage this evening because I'm convinced we've taken this value too far. This has been made possible by the acceptance of an idea known as moral relativism. According to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, moral relativism essentially claims that the difference between right and wrong, what we should or shouldn't do, is ultimately just a matter of opinion, and that there is no universal or absolute standard that applies to everyone. The consequence of this idea is the near complete tolerance of other people's moral decisions. Now, a 2015 publication from the same source pointed out that moral relativism is one of the most controversial philosophical ideas of our day. And I would contend that before we discuss other moral questions, we should first determine whether or not moral truth even exists at all. And so in the time we have together this evening, we'll see first how moral relativism is logically problematic. Then we'll address some arguments in favor of moral relativism. And lastly, you will see not only why you must, but how you can oppose it. Now, you might be wondering, what's wrong with moral relativism? The first thing we need to notice is that saying that we should live our lives in accord with the idea that there is no absolute truth is a self-refuting statement. In saying that there is no absolute truth, the moral relativist is making a truth claim. And it cannot be absolutely true that there is no absolute truth. That would be logically absurd. It's similar to a circular argument, which would be like someone saying, "You can trust me to be honest with you because I'm not lying." This type of argument is obviously not only unreliable, but logically inconsistent. Despite this major flaw, there are some arguments in favor of moral relativism which are well worth addressing. Now, some people say that morality is based upon your situations. And since situations are relative, since they vary, morality is also relative, or just a matter of opinion. To understand this argument better, let's use an example. By a show of hands, how many of you would agree that, in general, it's wrong to lie? I'm just going to have to assume that you're being honest with me on this one. But in general, most people would agree with that moral standard. Now let's apply a situation to it. Imagine you're living in Germany during the Holocaust of the Jews, and you're hiding some Jewish family members in your house. The Nazis come with their guns, break down your door, and ask you, are there any Jews in this residence? In this situation, by a show of hands, how many of you think it would be morally acceptable to lie? It seems as though it would. As the argument goes, relative situations equals relative morality. Now, while it is true that situations impact how we should or should not act, this argument simply doesn't prove that absolute moral truths do not exist. In fact, it proves quite the opposite. Dr. Peter Kreeft, the author of dozens of books on this topic and others like it, points out that this very argument presupposes that there is some absolute moral truth, because you need such a standard before you can apply it differently in different situations. Besides, if morality is just a matter of opinion, then the way situations impact morality is also just a matter of opinion. And so this argument is ultimately useless. Now, the second argument I'd like to address that favors moral relativism can be simply stated with two simple words. And these are words I'm sure many of us have said before, perhaps when we were doing something we weren't exactly proud of. Don't judge. Moral relativists will sometimes say that we shouldn't judge other people's moral choices. We should accept moral relativism, and this will help us live in peace and tolerate other people. This argument for moral relativism is not only hypocritical, but it's extremely dangerous. The hypocrisy of this argument is that in saying you shouldn't judge, the moral relativist is imposing a moral idea upon you. They're judging you for judging. In fact, moral relativism isn't really tolerant because it tolerates anything and everything except even the slightest trace of intolerance. And some things are truly and absolutely intolerable. And here we find the danger. To be logically consistent, the moral relativist must admit that the Holocaust of the Jews was not absolutely wrong, that slavery is not absolutely wrong, that acts of terrorism are not absolutely wrong. To be logically consistent, the moral relativist must admit that murder is not absolutely wrong, that rape is not absolutely wrong, that child abuse is not absolutely wrong, that self-mutilation is not absolutely wrong, that infanticide is not absolutely wrong, because at one time or another, someone thought each of these things was right for them. We know innately that these things and many others like them are wrong, and we can pass moral judgment upon them. And so, in the spirit of opposing moral relativism and acknowledging the existence of some absolute moral truths, we should first consider the implications of doing so. We should ask ourselves, what are these moral laws that we seem to know innately, and where did they come from? Every law has a lawgiver. Next, when we reject moral relativism, we will better appreciate the values of open-mindedness, free speech, and the exchange of ideas in dialogue and debate. Because when we engage with our family and friends and acquaintances on moral issues, instead of squabbling over mere opinions, we can instead collaborate in seeking the truth of the matter. And so as Americans, as human beings, we must reject moral relativism. But in doing so, we should also open our minds. But we should not leave them gaping wide open for fear of losing them altogether. I'd like to leave you all as I welcome you, contemplating the profound words, once again, of G.K. Chesterton, who said, "Merely having an open mind is nothing. The object of opening the mind, as of opening the mouth, is to close it again on something solid." And with that, I thank you.
Okay, so now for our next member is Melissa, and she's a Running Start student at Adna.
Hello, everyone. How is everyone tonight? Good, awesome. I'm great myself. My name is Melissa Klonowski. I am a Running Start student at Centralia College. I've been a part of speech club since, I want to say, fall or winter quarter, and I've loved every moment of it. So really quickly, I'm going to tell you guys my most embarrassing moment. So I guess I'll begin by saying one of the things you guys should know about me is I am terrible in the kitchen. Anything kitchen related, you do not want me cooking, ever. So one time, I'm out in the kitchen and my mother, she goes, turn on the stove so that she can make some tea, and she wants me to turn on the stove so that the tea kettle can start warming up and stuff. I was like, okay, that's super easy. And when somebody tells my brain to do something, I do it. I do not think about anything else. I go ahead and do it. So I turn on the stove without thinking, and I leave. I'm fine. Well, I go to my room, and my mother calls for me later. She sounds angry, and she goes, Melissa, did you check to make sure there was water in the tea kettle? And I was like, no, because she just told me to turn on the stove, so I'm going to turn on the stove. And the tea kettle had melted onto the stove. Liquefied metal was all deep in the stove, and it was awful. And my mother was furious. She was thinking she'd have to get a new oven and everything. And so she's calling my grandparents, and she's like, oh my gosh, Melissa melted my tea kettle, and I'm dying of embarrassment. And turns out it comes off. So if you do melt a tea kettle, it does come off, so your life is saved. But yeah, that's basically my most embarrassing moment. Please think outside the box. Check your tea kettle for water, please. And with that, I thank you.
All right, fun fact about our next speaker is that she loves drawing and she loves animals, with her favorite animal being a sloth.
And so with that, please, everyone welcome Carrie Southry.
Whoa, look at that chair. Look at all those chairs. Look at all that design in there. Look at all these people with all that design in them. You guys look so great. With here, I want to say, I am here to persuade you that everything is designed, and we're not here by chance. My three main reasons for this are we are not just cells, more beyond the grave, and the inconsistency of time. Let's look at my first main reason. We are not just cells. When looking at the makeup of life, everything has cells. Each cell has a specific purpose throughout the body. That didn't just happen. If you take a squirrel, for example, you have all the cells and genetic makeup of that squirrel. If you were to put that squirrel in the blender, mix it up, then pour out the remains, you still have all the cells and genetic makeup of that squirrel. But something doesn't seem quite right. Creation says that God created man. And in Genesis 1:26 and 27, it states, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created him. We were created, designed. Evolution says otherwise. Richard Forte, a British paleontologist who studies at the University of Cambridge, wrote in his book Fossils that the origin of life started 4 billion years ago from rocks. It rained on the rocks for millions of years, and these single-celled bacterial life forms formed on the rocks. It took me reading through 6 pages to tell you what I just said in one sentence. And all that happened by chance? Now, Lee Strobel, who used to be an atheist and an investigative journalist, now a Christian and an author who wrote A Case for Christ, says that after 20 years of research on the topic of evolution, that life could not have formed this way, that the origin of life points to an intelligent designer. On to my second reason, more beyond the grave. Creation says there is more. And in John, one of the Gospels, John was a disciple to Jesus. And in John 11:25 through 26, it says, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" Meaning that even after death, there is more. That if you believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, you could have eternal life in heaven. We are called to a greater meaning and purpose than living this life here on earth. Now, in evolution, we came from cells that just happened by chance. So in essence, nothing happens when you die, because you were here by chance. You're just here to live this one life with no real meaning or purpose. If so, then why do we have morality? Why do we have this sense of right and wrong if we were just here by chance? On to my last reason, inconsistency of time. Now, how old is the Earth? This is a frequent question many people want to know. Let's take dinosaurs, for example. How many of you out there like dinosaurs? Show of hands. Yep, I love dinosaurs. So we know that dinosaurs walked the earth, but the question is when. Looking into Scripture, it gives us an example of this in Job 40:15 through 20, which says, "Behold Behemoth, which I made as I made you. He eats grass like an ox. Behold his strength in his loins, and his power in the muscles of his belly. He makes his tail stiff like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are tubes of bronze, and his limbs are like bars of iron. He is the first of the works of God." This verse is describing a dinosaur which God had made. Now, evolution will agree that dinosaurs existed, but the timing of this is way off. In my research, I read through 5 different books. One of them written by Ohana and Serino, 2 National Geographic explorers, that all range from 65 to 300 million years in their existence. These times are all different and inconsistent. In biblical history, Don Stewart, a minister and head of Don Stewart Ministries, says that yes, Scripture doesn't give us exact dates, but it also does not teach that the earth is billions of years old. If time was stretched, like how evolution views time, this would violate the chronological framework of all biblical history. Science wants a date, but in my opinion, there isn't always going to be a date. We aren't always going to know the questions of how, when, and why, which is okay. Let's recap. I was here to persuade you that everything was designed and we're not here by chance. In my first reason, we are not just cells, I covered how we were created, designed, and we didn't just happen by chance. In my second reason, more beyond the grave, I said that if you believe in Jesus, you could have eternal life in heaven, and in evolution, there's nothing after death. And in my last reason, inconsistency of time, I talked about the dinosaurs and of biblical history. My call to action for you all is to open up and discover the Bible for yourself. And with that, I thank you.
So our next Speech Club member is Zephaniah, and he is a Running Start student from Centralia High School.
All right, hello everyone. As you know, my name is Zephaniah Williams. So, we always hear stories about young love, right? Raise your hand, how many of you guys had like a little crush when you were younger? Right? Yeah, it's a pretty common thing, right? Sparks fly. Well, this wasn't one of those things. So, as a little kid, I was about 7 years old, I had this big crush on this girl. She lived right next to me. I'd go outside every day of summer and play with her, and we'd have a great time. Well, also as a little kid, my mom did my laundry. So I had to let her know whenever I needed it to be done, and I just decided I didn't want to. So I was kind of low on clothes. Well, me being young, I didn't really make the best choices and decided, who needs underwear? It's not a big thing, right? How many of you guys aren't wearing underwear? Good on you for being honest. So I was like, I'll just put on these shorts, which, again, low on clothes. These shorts were definitely not my size. And I'm not talking small, I'm talking big. So I was like, we'll be fine. So I ran outside and we were having a great time. Laughing, playing around. And then I made the one fatal flaw. I had to impress her, right? Have to impress her. So I was like, I'm gonna climb this tree as fast as I possibly can. And, I jumped up, grabbed onto the branch, and I immediately knew what I did wrong. I could feel the breeze, I saw her face, and then I saw my face, and I was crying, and long story short, I ran up to my room, and yeah, again, it's not a, happy ending. We didn't talk for the rest of the summer, or ever again, and then she moved away. So it was pretty embarrassing, and with that, I thank you.
Hold on, I'm still laughing. All right, our next fun fact about our next speaker is that he has written and published over 300 instructional articles that have been collectively read over 1 million times.
So please everyone welcome Garrett Sandoval.
Is it okay to love? Well, no dip, huh, Sherlock? What kind of question even is that? Well, bear with me for a second here. I want everyone to close their eyes and picture your significant other. Husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, crush if you don't have one. Now imagine, what if your community lambasted you for being together? What if your family said it was evil? Hopefully you're thinking something along the lines of, well, that's ridiculous. I'm not evil. As a matter of fact, I want everyone to shout out, love is not evil, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Love is not evil. All right, great. Everyone open your eyes now. Now, that's all well and good. And I agree. But not everyone does. The social stigma of homosexuality being immoral is a pressure that we place on 8% of all high school students in America, roughly equivalent to the population size of Dallas, Texas. I'm here to convince you that homosexuality is not a moral failing in any way, shape, or form. I will be sharing 3 reasons why I believe this to be true. My first reason, the harm in homosexuality. My second reason, homosexuality is natural. And my third reason, love is human. Now, let's look at my first reason. According to the annual Youth Risk Behavior Survey conducted by the CDC, that is the Center for Disease Control Prevention, 30% of all self-identifying LGBTQ plus youths in America have attempted suicide. Twice as many suffer from depression. You may wonder why this is. They can marry now, they have the same rights as the rest of us. But did you also know that 1/4 of all families in the US would not, under any circumstances, support offspring that came out to them. See, this got me thinking. A while back, a family member of mine came to visit. And while we were talking, on my TV was playing a program you may have heard of 1,000 or 2,000 times, The Walking Dead. And in the middle of our discussion, this family member paused to huff and discuss evil comes in many forms. And at first this confused me because there didn't seem to be anything going on in that particular scene. Then it hit me. Looking past the liars and the thieves and the murderers on Walking Dead, this family member of mine was appalled at two men sharing a kiss. And I thought to myself, we know each other. We love each other. Would their opinion of me change so quickly if I brought a guy home? Would they think I'm evil? That's when I first came to understand that among the true consequences of homosexuality are rejection and invalidation, and those are simply the most common ones. Now, let's look at my second reason. Homosexuality is natural. Up until recent years, homosexuality has been regarded as a mental illness, a disease, something to be treated or fixed. In many parts, even in the US, it is seen as impure, or more commonly, a choice to pursue lustful desires. When homosexuality was thought to be curable, a little something called conversion therapy was introduced. This is a dangerous practice that can leave permanent psychological damage and is disapproved of by nearly every related modern medical organization in the country. To give you an idea of what conversion therapy is like, take the book 1984, for example. Now, spoiler alert for everyone who hasn't passed 8th grade English, but in the book 1984 by George Orwell, 4 fingers are held up to the protagonist, and he is tortured until he believes that those 4 fingers are 5. It's not true, but his brain is conditioned to believe that it is true. So what's the truth in this matter? Well, the truth is, homosexuality has been observed in upwards of 10% of all prevailing species in recorded history. This, according to neuroscience prodigy Dr. Arash Faraduni in an article he wrote for the Yale Scientific, that is the longest-running science magazine in the country. Now, a common opposing viewpoint to this is the fact that animals also exhibit behaviors such as cannibalism or rape. But that doesn't make it okay for us to do those things, and with good reason. This, however, is a false equivalency. Humans are not animalistic. We have advanced societies that establish laws to prohibit actions that pose a threat to society. Actions such as cannibalism and rape pose a direct threat to individuals as well as society as a whole, whereas homosexuality simply does not. And now, let's look at my final reason. Love is human. I'm going to preface my spiel by saying that there's only one chemical formula. Thanks to the findings of Russian biologist Dr. Dina Kudasheva, who has 30 years of experience in her field, we know that when we fall in love, the same chemical reactions are going off in our brains as they would in anyone else. There are noted differences in the brains between homosexuals versus heterosexuals, but it unfortunately remains unclear as to how much remains circumstantial and how much is not. There is also no gay gene, and decades of research has gone into this. But what we do know for certain is that humans experience love unique to any creatures on the planet. And that is not hubris speaking. I say this because humans are the only animals with a demonstrable conscience, that which is the ability to think creatively and intelligently, as well as the ability to reason. Love is indeed a social construct for humans. It's more than about survival, breeding, and forming a family unit. No, it's about finding someone who makes us happy and whom we make happy. Except herein lies the problem, because human beings are the only animals that have looked at homosexuality and said, you know what, I don't like that. Don't do that. And it serves no purpose. To deny love is to perpetuate suffering. So let's go over my main reasons. The harm in homosexuality. That which you may not first perceive, but is indeed very real. Homosexuality is natural. That which exists as a natural function in nature. And love is human. Unique to the animal kingdom, but universal to us. My call to action for you is really simple. Hug someone you love tonight. Because even if love is a social construct, I'll be plucked if it isn't the best one we have. And with that, I thank you.
Okay, so I will be telling my most embarrassing story. By raise of hands, how many people like spiders in here? Okay, very few. How many people don't like spiders? Okay, so you guys are gonna love my story. So as a child, I grew up loving any sort of animal. I would hold a bat I found, any stray dog I'd bring home. That was just how we grew up. So in kindergarten, you know how you had show and tell? And a lot of people brought interesting things like their favorite car, their favorite stuffed animal. I brought something a little bit different. So we had a pet spider. Her name was a tarantula. And so they molt, which means that they shed their skin. And that means they kind of look like a real spider still. It's pretty intact, and I would keep it in a mason jar and had it in my room. So I thought I would bring my molt of my spider to show and tell. So I show and tell, everybody's like, oh, that's so cool, oh, that's so creepy. And then on my way home, I was one of the cool kids, so I sat in the very back of the bus. And I were on the bus, and we hit a bump. And I dropped the mason jar, and my spider molt rolls to the front of the bus, where all the little kids sit. All of a sudden, we hear screaming, because they think it's a real spider. So the bus driver has to pull over the bus, and they think it's a real spider. They're like trying to figure out how this tarantula got on the school bus. So I had to shamefully raise my hand and say it was my spider molt. And from there, my parents had to be called, and I had to be picked up, and they had to reassure all the kids that the spider was indeed just the molt. So that was my most embarrassing story.
All right, fun fact about our next speaker is that last summer he completed the Portland to Seattle bike ride.
And with that, please welcome Carter Bowman.
Ever since I've given my life to Christ, I have tried my best. I've spoken with my mouth that Jesus is Lord, and I believed in my heart that he was raised from the dead. So I will be saved. Now, those of you who know a lot about the Bible know that that's from a very specific verse. And it tells you what you need to do to be saved. But the other side of that it tells you, that if you don't do those things, you won't be saved. So those of you in the audience who aren't Christians, I want you to imagine for a second that you are, and that you believe that verse. And you believe that if you don't do those things, you won't be saved. And I want you to imagine how much you'd have to hate someone to not share the gospel with them. How much you'd have to despise someone to maybe have them not be saved because you didn't talk to them. Now, I'm sure you're all thinking the same thing. I'm sure your faith works for you, but I'm not a Christian. And why should I believe in that verse? Why should I believe in the Bible? What if it's not even right? Well, I'm here today to persuade you that the Bible is correct or that Christ is right. And Christ is right for 3 reasons. Number 1, without God, there is no morality. 2, the Bible fact checks itself. And 3, the Bible predicts itself. So let's look at my first main point. Without God, there is no morality. So if you believe in morality, where do you think it comes from? You can just shout it out. Anybody? Integrity? So we've got integrity. We've obviously got God. I'm going to add one more on here just for the sake of argument. A lot of people say it comes from society. All right. So the thing is, though, only one of those is a reasonable spot for morality to come from. Because integrity essentially means honesty, right? And honesty of the person, right? They believe what they're doing is right. That's kind of similar to the self. All I have to do is go back a couple hundred years, and we have slavery in our very own nation. Unless you're willing to tell me that slavery is moral, the society cannot be a good spot for morality because society supported slavery. The slave owners, their integrity was not interrupted. Like they thought what they were doing is right. They legitimately thought they were better, but they weren't. So I'd like you to raise your hand if slavery was acceptable back then, if slavery was moral back then, because society and integrity of people thought so. And that leaves us as God. But why is God a good spot for morality? Because God was all-powerful and all good. So he can decide and make this contrast between good and evil. And he has the authority to do that. So we know there is a God. But how do we know it's the Christian God? Well, the next reason Christ is right is that the Bible fact checks itself. You see, the Bible isn't one book. It's actually lots of different manuscripts all put together. And there's actually 4 main books that talk about Jesus: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. They all say the same thing. They tell you where Jesus went, who he healed, that he died on the cross, that he was resurrected. They all have the same information, written by different people. If that's not enough for you, let's actually look at the individual reputable of the sources. Mark and Luke, Mark and Luke, both knew disciples. They knew people talked to Jesus, so they wrote based off of first-hand account. Matthew wrote the first gospel, so he wrote before anybody else was really writing about Jesus. And Paul was an eyewitness to the events that happened in Jesus' life. So we've got 4 people who all tell us that Jesus did these things. But if that's not enough for you, my third point, which is that the Bible predicts itself. And what I mean by this is the Old Testament was written hundreds of years before the New Testament, predicts very specifically the Messiah. In fact, over 300 times does it reference the Messiah. I don't have enough time to tell you 300 instances. I do have enough time to tell you 2. So in the book of Zechariah in the Old Testament, Zechariah 11:12, it says that the price of the Lord will be 30 pieces of silver. In the book of Matthew, Judas betrays Jesus for exactly 30 pieces of silver. And in Psalms, it says that the Messiah will be killed by piercing his hands and feet. And in all the Gospels, that is confirmed. And now I'd like to point out that this was before crucifixion, when they predicted this. So they didn't predict he'd die like a criminal. They described crucifixion before it happened. And now you might be thinking, okay, I understand that, but what if they just changed the prophecies after it happened? Well, you see, the people who adhered to these prophecies, Pharisees, hated Jesus. They were some of the people who got him killed. So why would they add credibility to someone they were trying actively to discredit. It doesn't make any sense. Now, let's move on to a counterpoint. A lot of the arguments against them are like, well, maybe that's all right. Maybe the original documents were correct, but it's been translated so many times that it's just not reliable anymore. We don't have the original copies. Well, we actually have more evidence to the original copies for the Bible than we do for the Roman Empire. You see, a guy named Tacitus, he wrote most of the history of what we have in the Roman Empire. In fact, all of it is almost based off one book and that he wrote. And today, of his works, we have 2 copies still in the original language. Both are written 10 centuries after the original. As for the gospel, we have 5,700 copies, all written less than 100 years after the original. So let's recap. I'm here today to persuade you that the Bible is right and that Christ is right. So we proved nobody could come up with a reason other than God for morality, so there is a God. Second, the Bible fact checks itself. So we know that the original sources are accurate because 4 people all wrote about Jesus in the same way. And lastly, the Bible predicts itself. So we have they predicted what we just proved was accurate. And we have more evidence that what we have today is accurate to the original sources than we do for the Roman Empire. So unless you're willing to discredit the Roman Empire. And so the Bible fact checks itself was from Matt Slick, has a master's degree in divinity. And the other source I used for this was Israel Jerusalem, a nonpartisan site dedicated to the history of Jerusalem. My call to action to you is to go home and read the Bible for yourself. And with that, I thank you.
So now we're going to take our intermission. There's lots of food and drink to be eaten, and there's also a photo booth that we created with funny props, so make sure that you also take your photo. The intermission will probably be about 15 to 20 minutes, so you can leave your seats now. We're just going to let everyone get seated and let the food digest a little bit. Okay, so we got Kahoot working. We're going to try this.
Yep.
Okay, let's see how this works. Okay, so again, you're going to open up your web browser and put kahoot.it, and then there's the game pin that you're going to enter in.
No inappropriate names.
Please.
Batman is allowed, though, but no multiple Batman.
Yeah, and try not to have duplicates. You can have teams if you want, so go ahead and start. All right. Can you read these ones?
I have no idea what the maximum capacity of a Kahoot is, but we're going to find out.
We're just trying so many things today. It's okay. It's a lot of people. Do you see any more names coming? Okay, I don't think I see any more names. Is anyone still logging in? Of course, my sister. Hurry up. Are you good? Okay. Let's see. Oh, there's more. How about now? Are we good? Is everyone logged in? You can't click it from there, Jack. Okay, so now can you please press?
All right, Blazer Bill, press start.
Okay, here we go. The first question. Which year was Centralia College founded? 1920, 1930, 1925, or 1935? And there's 10 seconds left. Okay, so yes, the answer is 1925. Is it working?
Turn on that thing.
Okay, so Delilah is in the lead. We're gonna do one more question before our next speaker. What is the address of Centralia College? And pay close attention. So it's 600 Centralia College Street, College Road, College Avenue, or College Boulevard? And it's 600 Centralia College Boulevard.
All right, our next speaker, fun fact about her is that she can roll her eyes to the back of her head and hold it for minutes on end.
And with that, please welcome Zoe Rogowski.
So, I have a question for you guys. How many of you exfoliate? Better question, how many of you guys exist? I know it's silly, but raise your hands. Come on, come on. Congratulations. You are all murderers and you are all going to hell. You see, every year we lose about 9 pounds of dead skin cells. That averages out to about 1/3 of an ounce a day. 1/3 of an ounce also happens to be the weight of a human embryo at 8 weeks. This is the time where 2/3 of abortions take place. It's kind of ridiculous for me to call you murderers, right? Right? Well, that is the rationale being used by certain people against abortion, some of which are responsible for making our laws about women's bodies. This kind of thinking is very dangerous to women, and that is one of the reasons why I am here to tell you why we need to protect a woman's fundamental right to a safe and legal abortion. My first main point is that it's an embryo, not a baby. My second main point is that abortion protects women. And my third main point is that abortion protects victims. Now on to my first point. It's an embryo, not a baby. In Roe v. Wade, it was determined that in the first trimester of pregnancy, whether or not the pregnancy was terminated is completely and solely up to the woman. It was also determined that the state could not outlaw abortions until the point where the fetus is viable. You see, according to Michelle Yee Lee, a fact checker for the Washington Post, a fetus isn't viable until 24 to 28 weeks. As I stated previously, 2/3 of abortions happen at 8 weeks or before. According to the Guttmacher Institute, 2/3 of abortions. Let me put that in perspective for you. If every seat in this theater represented an abortion, 2/3 or 334 seats would be abortions that were performed before the 8-week mark. Eight weeks is long before viability. It's also long before the fetus can feel anything. It is even before it is considered a fetus. At the 8-week mark, it is still considered an embryo. So when it comes to abortion, we are not talking about a beautiful, bouncing baby. The majority of the time, we are not even talking about a fetus. When we are talking about abortion, we are talking about an embryo. Now on to my second main point. It protects women. Having access to safe and legal abortions protect women from taking deadly risks in order to terminate a pregnancy. The majority of you have probably heard of a term called coat hanger abortions. For those of you who haven't, a coat hanger abortion is when a woman forcefully inserts a metal wire into herself in hopes of ending her pregnancy. As you can tell, that would probably lead to many complications. As Dr. Jen Gunter says, when inserting the metal wire, if the woman manages to make it past her cervix, she could lacerate uterine arteries, which could cause her to bleed out in a matter of minutes. That isn't the only complication, though. When the sharp end of the wire is inserted inside herself, it could easily penetrate the woman's bowels and lead to serious infection or irreversible damage or even death. This isn't the only method women seek, though. Women also tend to go for vitamin C abortions. It is seen as a natural alternative, but it still comes with awful side effects. When vitamin C is taken at such high doses as it is required to terminate a pregnancy, it can lead to kidney stones and hemorrhages. But women that end up with these are still considered the lucky ones. No woman should have to die because she's not ready for a child. On to my third point. It protects victims. Many people say we should only have abortions in cases of forced pregnancy such as rape. According to the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, there is an estimated 32,000 pregnancies as a result from rape a year in America. 32,000 women that have to be reminded of their sexual assault every time they look down. That is more than the populations of Centralia, Chehalis, Rochester, and Adna combined, annually. It is hard enough to tell your friends, your family, or even the police about your sexual assault. Women shouldn't have to dictate the details of their sexual assault to complete strangers to receive the care they deserve. According to the National Violence Hotline, 1/3 of women and 1/4 of men have experienced domestic violence. Victims will often stay with their abuser because of their children. Even if they do happen to escape, the abuser could still use the children as a means to terrorize their victim even after they leave. No one should have to live with that abuse for their children. By keeping abortion safe, legal, and easily accessible, we are helping to stop the abuse. Now let's look at my opposing viewpoint. Many people say we should ban abortion because it goes against the word of God. Well, One man's religion should not determine what another can and cannot do with their body. To allow our laws to be based on religious beliefs not only blurs the line between church and state, but it also goes against the Establishment Clause by clearly supporting a certain religion. A quote from the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty sums this up perfectly. We have freedom of and from religion. If we do not have both, we have neither. Forced religion is simply a violation of conscience, not a response to God. To be sure, one does not have freedom from religion in the sense to insist your neighbor not to perform a sermon on the corner of the street, or to have our society secularize itself to fit one's worldview. But one most certainly has the religious freedom to insist that our state does not sponsor a religion. So let's recap. I was here today to convince you on why we need to protect a woman's fundamental right to have a safe and legal abortion. My 3 main points were that it's an embryo, not a baby, abortions protect women, and abortions protect victims. My call to action is to keep abortion safe and keep abortion legal. Do not let someone who doesn't even know the building they're protesting doesn't perform abortions tell you what you can or cannot do with your body. Do not go gentle into that good night. You are a person, you have a choice, so please, get out there and vote. Vote to keep abortion safe, and vote to keep abortion legal. And with that, I thank you.
Okay, good, it's still working. So now go ahead and everyone pull out your phones again, and it should just let you resume. If not, then you can enter the game pin again. So let me know if you guys are good by raising your hands if you guys are good. Is everyone good? So we resume? Okay. Maybe, helps if I turn it on. Okay. What was the name of the building that was recently demolished on campus? Kemp Hall, the old clock tower, Hanson Hall, or campus housing? And it's Kemp Hall. And I know a lot of people who used to go to Centralia College actually had classes there. Okay, nickname, okay, go is in lead. So what is the name of Centralia College's mascot? Trailblazer Bob, Blazer Billy, Blazer Bill, or Trailblazer Bobby?
It's a tough one, I know.
Wow, okay, so our mascot is Blazer Bill. And with that,
Our next speaker, fun fact about her is that she's a huge Disney fan, has been to Disney World in Florida 6 times and can't wait to go back for her 7th.
so everyone please give a warm welcome to Emily Horwath.
All right. I'd like to start by having everyone close their eyes and imagine with me for just a moment that you're in an average classroom on an average day. There are tables and chairs, books, and students learning. Suddenly, off in the distance, you hear gunshots, and your heart drops. The situation you never thought would come is here, now. And you have only the tools that surround you and a prayer that this gunman won't come for you to keep you alive. You can all open your eyes now. It doesn't have to be like this. You can use something that's not just a weapon, but also a resource to keep you and your loved ones safe and protected. Now you might be thinking, well, these gun laws are in place for a reason. I'm not in danger if no one has access to these guns. So, let's brainstorm for a moment. You should all have an insert in your program that has Emily's box in it, where you can write notes, or just if you don't have a pen, you can follow along in your head. But I'd like everybody to think of some places where guns are not allowed, some gun-free zones. All right, can anybody name one for me? Courthouses? Another? Stadiums? Another? Airports? Did I hear that? Okay. I'll take one more. Schools. Schools, perfect. All right, I'd like to tell you about a couple of recent shootings that have happened in the past couple of months. The morning after November 7th, 2018, NBC News reported of a deadly shooting that happened in a gun-free nightclub in Thousand Oaks, California, which happens to be the state with some of the highest gun control laws in the country. 12 people were killed. Students and staff experienced panic. Students and staff at University of North Carolina, Charlotte experienced panic on April 30th, 2019, just 1 month ago, when a gunman walked onto their gun-free campus, killed 2 people, and injured 4 more. In fact, the Crime Research Center reported in 2018 that 97.8% of shootings since 1950 have happened on gun-free zones, just like these. 97.8%. Now you might be thinking, well, then these guns are easy to get access to. Everyone can get them. They're easier to get than, say, a driver's license. Well, by show of hands, how many of you in here have your driver's license? Awesome. Now keep your hands raised if you have purchased a gun. Okay, there's a few of us in here. Awesome. So for those of you who don't know, my dad is an owner and operator of a gun store here in Centralia, Washington, and he has to deal with these gun laws every single day. So I asked him, what does it take to purchase a gun? This is what he said. You have to have your driver's license and current address. You might even need your social security number and a concealed weapons permit. Now, to purchase a pistol in the state of Washington, you have to be 21 years of age. If you have your concealed weapons permit, you have to fill out this lengthy federal form here and this state form. The dealer then initiates a background check based on what you filled out on the federal form. They decide at the FBI if you walk away with a gun that day. If you don't have your concealed weapons permit, the process is about the same, but it takes a few more days because this all has to go through several different offices. Now, to purchase a rifle as of today in the state of Washington, you have to be at least 18 years of age. You have to fill out this same lengthy federal form and go through that FBI background check. So in total, that's about 2 to 3 background checks per gun. Now, these gun control laws are not just about Second Amendment rights. They're about equal rights. They're about women's rights. Now, let me explain what I mean. When a man attacks a woman, she is at a disadvantage because the man is stronger than her. Let's test this. I'd like to call Paul Croft, Cheyenne Meyer, and Zachary Horwath up on stage with me. Boys, you can stand right here. We're going to arm wrestle and see who wins. All right, Cheyenne and Paul first.
Oh boy.
Go. All right, okay.
Can't believe I won.
Zachary. Ready, set, go. All right. So, as you can see, the men won in these situations. In fact, Neil Burton reported in 2012 in Psychology Today that men have greater muscle mass, stronger and denser bones, tendons, and ligaments. If someone's intention is already to break the ultimate law, what law is going to stop them then? Let's think about these states across the country that are cracking down on abortion. What's going to stop them from getting what's going to stop those women from getting an abortion? Does that mean it's going to stop existing there? Probably not. So how is a gun different? So I ask of you, if you're not comfortable exercising your Second Amendment right, please don't let that stop someone else from exercising it and protecting their family. It is in our Constitution. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And with that, I thank you.
All right, so go ahead and pull out your phones again for trivia. Okay, we ready? Come on, Casey. Okay, are we good? Okay, so next question. How does CC divide their school year? Semester, trimester, quarter, or online? Did everyone answer already? Well, let's go over time. I think you guys already know, but we'll see. Yeah, so it's on a quarter system. Okay, nickname. Okay, go. You're still ahead. So how many bachelor programs does CC offer? Or degrees, if you want to be technical. So yes, the answer is 4. 2 of them I will be naming is Diesel Tech and Computer Science.
The other 2 are Bachelors of Applied Management Day and Night program and the Bachelors in Education. All right, our next speaker, fun fact about him is that he's been playing guitar for almost 7 years and teaching for 4.
So please everyone welcome Michael Hoskinson.
$60 million. 60 million lives have been taken since 1973. 60 million people will never be known, will never get to experience life, and will never even get to know their own family. I'm Michael Hoskinson, and I'm here today to persuade you that abortion should be illegal everywhere. Let's take a look at my 3 main points. Abortion is murder, abortion changes sexual behavior, and abortion is not what God intended. Now, before we get into my first main point, I'd like you to think for a moment your belief on abortion. Are you pro-abortion? If so, do you think it can be done all the way up till birth, or is there a cutoff point? Can it only be done in the cases of rape? Consider your thought on these stances so you know exactly where you stand and what you stand for. And I want to clarify something. If you are pro-abortion, I'm not your enemy here. Okay, we're on the same team, but with different opinions, and that's really, really okay. So all I ask of you tonight is that you just hear me out. Let's take a look at my first main point. Abortion is murder. According to the United States Department of Justice, which is an official government website, murder is the unlawful killing of a human being. It's pretty straightforward. But is the fetus considered a human being? Well, Sylvanus is an author for the Journal of European Society for Philosophy of Medicine and Healthcare. And he states that because the fetus is a potential human being, that it is worth protecting. See, to some it's just a clump of cells. But really, we are talking about a person with a future different than any of ours. That was somebody's spouse, somebody's best friend, somebody's hero. And they never even got a chance to show the world what they were made of. Let's take a look at my second main point. Abortion changes sexual behavior. According to Click, who is an author for the official Journal of Legal Studies Chicago, we find that gonorrhea and syphilis incidences are significantly and positively correlated with abortion legalization. See, because people are not really concerned about becoming pregnant since they can just get rid of the baby, people have been engaging in a lot more irresponsible sexual activity over the years. And this has led to a much higher STD rate. But not only that, this is also a sin. See, most of these abortions and STD cases happen outside of marriage. Hebrews 13:4 says that the marriage should be honored and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. My point with all this is that abortion legalization has led to more of this sin. Let's take a look at my third and final reason. Abortion is not what God intended. See, as stated in Hebrews, sex was meant for marriage and for marriage only. It was never intended for just a one-night stand. It was designed for reproduction. But people have been greatly misusing it over the years as more of a fun time than what it was actually meant for. Just like how the womb was specifically designed to carry another living being. That's what it was meant for. Furthermore, people are willing to kill babies in order to have this fun time. Let's take a look at some opposing viewpoints. It's my body, I choose what to do with it. No, it is not your body. You don't have 2 hearts, 2 brains, or 2 futures. And if you do claim that it is your body and that you can do whatever you want with it, then you must also accept that a woman could legally torture her baby to death inside the womb without punishment if she wanted to. It's her body. My second point. It's not fair for the mother not to have a choice. And you're absolutely right, it isn't. But the mother did have a choice. And she made that choice when she decided to sleep with another man. Don't tell me I deserve a choice as you rip the choice away from somebody else. And what about rape? This is a tough one to answer. 32,000 pregnancies occur each year from rape. 1.3 million abortions occur every year. If we're generous and we said that every single woman that conceived from rape got an abortion, that would make up 2% of all abortions. 2%. We are using this 2% statistic to justify 100% of abortions. Now, I don't wish to downsize rape. It's a horrible, terrible thing. But it does not justify infanticide. So let's recap. I was here today to persuade you that abortion should be illegal everywhere. My first main point, abortion is murder. We talked about the definition of murder, as well as whether or not the fetus is considered a human being. My second reason, abortion changes sexual behavior. We talked about how people have been engaging in much more irresponsible sexual activity over the years, which has led to a much higher STD rate, and this is because of abortion. My third main reason, abortion is not what God intended. It was specifically designed, sex was specifically designed for reproduction, but people have been greatly misusing it over the years. My call to action to you guys tonight is really simple. I could stand up here all night telling you why abortion is wrong. But let's consider our most basic morals here for a second. Is this really okay? Not right now. But at some point when you have some time to just stop and think. I would like you to write down whether or not you think abortion should be legal or illegal. Then I want you to crumple it up. I want you to throw it away. And here's why. It's easy for us to say, yeah, I believe in abortion, or I think it shouldn't be legal. But when you write it down, you're challenging that belief. See, our brain doesn't want to write something down that doesn't actually think is true. So, do you really believe it? Or do you want to believe it, but there's something telling you it isn't right? Ladies and gentlemen, that is the baby's voice. And with that, I thank you.
Okay, Casey, it's Kahoot time. I know. You guys better watch out for Casey. Okay, here we go for our next question. Who's the current president of Speech Club? Nikki Allen, Cheyenne Meyer, Ernesto Cabrera, or Paul Croft? I hope you guys get this right. Wink, wink. All right, so yes, I'm Cheyenne Meyer, and I'm the Speech Club president. So our next question, what candy is giving out in the Writing Center? You guys can make a good guess if you don't know. So it's Red Vines, Taffy, Smarties, or Tootsie Rolls, and they're notorious for having this kind of candy. Wow, yes, so it's Red Vines. So the Writing Center is on campus for anybody who needs help with their scripts or with essays or resumes, pretty much anything that you need, and they give out Red Vines.
All right, fun fact about our next speaker is at the age of 15, he restored a 1963 Chevy Impala.
And with that, please welcome Jacob Kinswaw.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So, I'd like to ask you guys to picture yourselves when you were young and 16. Now, to help you with this, maybe think of some of the interests you had, or decisions you made, or maybe the friends and the influence that those friends had on you. Now, for some, I know it might have been a dark time. At least for me it was, and it was only a year ago. I'm only 17. But I want you to think about this. Would you have wanted your 16-year-old self to vote when you were that age? Now, my name is Jacob, and I'm here today to explain to you why lowering the voting age is a horrible idea, and it must be put to rest. Now, I stand by this claim for 3 reasons, and they will be my 3 main points for today. My first reason, lack of motivation. My second, poor decision. And my third, too crucial. So let's get started with my first main point, lack of motivation. When you walked in, you were handed a brochure. And in that brochure, there's an insert. So in the insert, there's a bar graph that looks just like this. Now, this bar graph is from the United States Census Bureau, and it shows the voter motivation between age groups. And as you can tell, the lowest is ages 18 to 24. And it's right here, it's 43%. And then the highest is ages 65 to 74. Now, I got 2 circle graphs here to show you because I want you to know that that's a big difference in number. That's not just a little bit higher, that's a big difference. And here's a good representation of just how big it really is. But we can infer from this graph that as you grow older, you become more motivated to go out and vote. So let's go to my second point. Poor decision. 2 social scientists by the name of Tak Wing Chang and Walter Clayton were asked to put together a research project about whether or not lowering the voting age was a good idea, scientifically speaking. Well, they came back with a very strong no. And they came out with a no because they found that a teen's brain isn't actually fully developed until ages 18 to 24. And the prefrontal cortex, the front of a teen's brain, that's the part that's not developed. And that, my friends, is the part that helps you make or weigh decisions in your life. So that's a pretty vital part when you're trying to vote. Let's talk about car insurance for a second. All right, so I'm speaking to the parents directly. Raise your hand if when you added your 16-year-old to your insurance plan, it skyrocketed. All right, that's because insurance companies know that 16-year-olds make poor decisions. They know that they're easily influenced. So they raise your plan. They make you pay extra because they know this. So why don't we? Why don't we know this? Let's go to my third point, too crucial. Let's be honest, voting is too crucial to fall in the hands of a group of kids that lack motivation, as we can tell, probably majority lack maturity, and they are poor decision makers, and they're poor decision makers scientifically speaking. All right? In addition, let's talk about some opposing viewpoints. Now, there are plenty of opposing viewpoints out there. One in particular is, well, there are plenty of 40-year-olds that lack motivation as well. But see, we can disprove that theory right here because in that diagram, it shows that as you grow older, you become more motivated to go out and vote. Now, originally, I was going to give you Jamie Herrera-Beller's email address, and I was going to have you email her and state your opinion on why we shouldn't allow teenagers to vote. But I know that most people aren't going to do that. And that's okay. So I'm just going to tell you to vote no. Vote no, because it's going to come up in legislation. But before I go, I would like to talk to you guys about something else. Now, can anybody tell me what these names have in common? Anybody? What do these 4 names have in common? Democrats. They're Democrats. Exactly. You're exactly right. Now, 3 of these are actually presidential candidates. Now I ask you this. Why is it that it's the Democratic candidates that want to push 16-year-olds to vote? What ulterior motives could these politicians be after? In addition, why is it's the 60-year-old politicians pushing 16-year-olds to vote, and it's not the 16-year-olds themselves? I appreciate you spending your time with me, and with that, I thank you.
Okay, before we play Kahoot, I know you're really excited. Before we play Kahoot, we give out an award every year for audience choice. And that's where the judges don't get to decide who they think is the top speaker. You guys get to decide. So right now, we're going to have people hand you a piece of paper. And if you need a pencil, raise your hand if you don't have a pen or pencil with you. And we are going to encourage you after our last speaker to write down your favorite speaker so far. We also will remind you names or the topics after our last speaker. So we'll just give them some time to pass this stuff out and we'll go and do it. We may go till 9. We may go till 9. Whatever. Should I announce the prize for Kahoot or no? What? Should I announce the prize for Kahoot or no? My sister needs one again. Do I get to pick an audience? Do I get to pick an audience favorite? Do I get to pick an audience favorite? Okay, so now we're going to go on to our next Kahoot question. Let me turn it on again. All right. So who is a speech club advisor? Austin Majors, who's also one of our judges, Joe Burr, Jeff McQuarrie, or Alicia Williams? All right, yes, it's Jeff McQuarrie. He's our speech club advisor. So now our next question. Who is the founder of Centralia? So George Lopez, George Blazer, George Bush, or George Washington?
Remember, this is Centralia, not Centralia College.
And yes, it is George Washington.
I thought you were going to do it. All right. It's not the President George Washington. It's George Washington, the son of an African-American slave. All right. Our last speaker of the night, fun fact about him is that he's one of 9 kids and has hiked across Olympic and Cascade Mountains.
And please welcome Ben Corwin.
One day in 2011, Jamie Bindle got up and hugged her family goodbye for the last time. Jamie was a corrections officer at a Washington State prison, and that day it was her job to guard the chapel. Everything went well in her shift until the last hour when one man stayed in the chapel. His name was Byron Scherf. After everyone else had left, Scherf backed Bindle into a corner and strangled her with a microphone cord. Less than an hour later, they were both found, and Scherf confessed to the murder of Jamie Bindle. This is where things get a little bit crazy. You see, because Scherf was already receiving a life sentence in prison, and this crime took place in Washington State, which doesn't have the death penalty. For these reasons, Scherf received no further punishments for his crimes. And this is one of my reasons, on why I believe that we need to reinstate the death penalty in Washington State. Hi, I'm Ben Corwin, and I'm here to talk to you about the death penalty and why I believe that we need the death penalty reinstated in Washington State. I have 3 main reasons for why I believe that we need to reinstate the death penalty. My first reason is actions need consequences. My second reason is that it acts as a deterrent against crime. And my third reason is that it's biblical. Now let's move on to my first main point, which is actions need consequences. So like I said earlier, Byron Scherf killed Jamie Bindle and received no further punishments for his crimes. But that's not how it started, because actually in the beginning, he was actually convicted and sentenced to the death penalty. But before the death penalty could be carried out, Jay Inslee abolished it in Washington State. There were actually 8 people on death row when this happened, and Jay Inslee came out with a comment, and he said that all these men would receive proper punishment for their crimes. But as we know, Byron Scherf already had life in prison. He was sent back to prison with a life sentence, as were all the others. So there was no proper punishment for his crime, and there was no justice brought to Jamie Bindle and her family. And that's why I believe that we need to reinstate the death penalty, so we can bring justice to family like Jamie Bindle's, and we can have proper punishments for the awful crimes that men like Byron Scherf commit. Now let's move on to my second main point, which is it acts as a deterrent against crime. So just think about it. If you were a bad person and you were going to do something bad, and you knew that you could receive the death penalty for doing that, would you be less likely to do it? Well, statistics show that yes, you would be less likely to do it. There was actually a study done by a man named Michael Summers. And Michael Summers was a professor at Pepperdine University for 36 years. And he studied human behavior. And in his time there, he wrote an article on the death penalty. And in his article, he found that states that use the death penalty in the year following an execution had an average of 74 fewer murders in that year following the execution. And then people said that this might be a random occurrence. So we studied the relationship over a 26-year period and discovered that the chances of this being a random occurrence was 1 in 18,000. So we know for a fact that there's a direct relationship between the death penalty and less crime for the states that use it, which is why this is my second reason for why I believe we need to reinstate the death penalty, so it can prevent crime in our communities and keep our communities a safer place. Now let's move on to my third main point. It's biblical. Clearly, not everyone here is Christian, but you don't need to be a Christian to understand that there are some universal truths in this ancient text. Just like our founding fathers recognized that there are some inalienable rights that we all have. So, the death penalty is supported within the Bible. The death penalty is actually brought up over 75 times within the Bible and carried out many times within it. One such verse that supports the death penalty is Genesis 9:6, which says, "Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made mankind." So Christian or not, I think we can all agree that life itself is sacred. And if we view it as such, the Bible tells us that those who are going to take a life unjustly should be punished. And those who are going to take it unjustly can receive the death penalty because life is sacred. And that is my third main reason for why I believe we need to reinstate the death penalty, because the Bible tells us that life is sacred and the people who take it unjustly need to be punished. So I understand that many people still don't agree with the death penalty. And there's one main point that most people bring up, and it is that people are wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death for something that they didn't do. And I'll admit this is something that used to happen, but not anymore. I'd actually like to tell you a story about a man I met. His name was Kirk Bloodsworth. And Kirk was unique because he was on death row for 9 years. And he's also unique because he was the first ever person to be proven innocent with DNA testing. And Kirk told me that nowadays it is basically impossible for someone to be proven innocent, proven guilty, let alone sentenced to death, because of our new modern technology and resources. With our new modern technology and resources, we have technology everywhere, and it makes it hard for someone to get away with something now, right? And with our new forensics, it is even more impossible for someone to be wrongfully convicted. And this is why I'm okay with supporting the death penalty, because I know that only people who commit awful crimes, like Byron Scherf's crime, and the monsters and the predators that are out there, those are the only people that will receive this. And I'm not worried about an innocent person being convicted and given the death penalty. And that's why I'm okay with supporting this. So guys, just to recap, I was here to talk to you about the death penalty and why I believe that we need to reinstate it in Washington State. I gave you 3 main reasons for why I believe that we need to reinstate it in Washington State. My first reason was that actions need consequences. People like Byron Scherf weren't receiving proper consequences for their actions. My second reason was it makes our community safer by preventing crime. It actually reduces murder rates in states that have it. And my third reason was that it's biblical. The Bible actually tells us that those people who are going to take a life unjustly should be punished because life itself is sacred. And now that I've told you why I believe that we need to reinstate the death penalty, I'd like to encourage you guys to also support the death penalty. And there's one main way that you can all do that, and that is in the way that you vote. So I want to ask you all, next time voting comes around, to vote for someone who will support your beliefs and who will support the death penalty so that we can make Washington a better and safer place. And with that, I thank you.
Okay, so that was our last speaker, so please take a moment and fill out your audience choice. Paul will be going over the speakers and their topics again to kind of refresh your memory.
All right, our first speaker of the night was Casey Emery, who talked about mental health. Second speaker of the night was Simon Stair, who talked about moral relativism. May have said that wrong. Third speaker of the night was Carrie Sathry, which talked... Oh. All right, my job's useless.
No, you keep telling them.
No, it's fine. It's on the board.
All right, that's fine. And so when you're done, please raise your hand. We'll have people come along and take your papers. Yes, please vote for one. Hey, Nikki, do you need help? She's gonna run over.
Did you have a question?
No, I said raise your hand to pick them up.
Oh, raise hand. See,
You
I
listen to me?
wasn't even listening to you. What's the choices of them listening to you?
Oh, thank you. And so while we're waiting for because we have talliers in the back saying who won tonight's showcase, while that's going on, we'll play playing Kahoot until Nikki comes back up and tells us who won. So after we collect everything, we'll start playing again. Oh. Keep it on.
It's on.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start playing Kahoot again until everyone's ready. Oh, Judges is ahead. So who provided tonight's coffee? Starbucks, Fiddlers, Dutch Bros, or Avenue? Oh, geez. We're going to have to wait a while for the timer to go down. Okay, yes, Fiddlers provided tonight's coffee. What is CC's radio station? And yes, we have a radio station. A lot of people don't know.
I didn't.
You can actually take classes to learn how to sports broadcast here, so.
I didn't know that either.
Do you go here?
Yes, I do. I spend like 10 hours a day on campus.
Yeah, okay, so the CC's radio station is 91.3 KCED. So which year was Speech Club established?
I know this one.
So 2009, 2012, 2004, or 2014? And we actually have it wrong in our Speech Club class, so we need to get
On our
that
banner,
changed.
yeah.
Yeah, it's got messed up.
I'm not paying for it.
Yes, and the answer is 2014, so it's fairly new, and it's a 5th annual speech showcase. So what food helps with stress? If you took Jeff's class, this should be easy for you.
Read carefully.
So yes, the answers are bananas, turkey, all of the above, or pistachios. Oh, okay. And yes, all of the above is, so all of these foods have tryptophan in them, so it actually helps you stay calm. So like after like Thanksgiving, if you eat a bunch of turkey and you feel really tired and sleepy, it's because it has tryptophan in it. So who is the new vice president of instruction on campus? To be fair, I didn't know this. Jeff informed me.
Well, she didn't know. I obviously didn't know it. She's always right.
Thank you.
Except for today, you were wrong once.
Wait, when?
About the certificates having stands.
Yeah, so Joyce Hammer is the new VP. What is the statue outside Washington Hall called? And there's actually a picture of it. So the answer, or reach for the stars, land on the stars, hold on to the stars, or catch a falling star. And yes, it's called Reach for the Stars. Laura is in the lead. How many sports does CC offer for women? So the answers are 6, 5, 3, or 2. Man, 30 seconds is a long time. Oh, where's the gift card for the winner? What? The gift card for the winner. Okay. Yeah, so the answer is 5. So we have golf, volleyball, basketball, fast pitch, and soccer. I remembered all of them. So where is CC East located? Mossy Rock, Yelm, Morton, or Randall? Oh, that was fast.
Yeah.
All right, Morton. Laura is still in the lead. What sports does CC offer for men? Basketball and golf, baseball and soccer, soccer and golf, or baseball and basketball? Yeah, so it's baseball and basketball. And I think they're working on towards getting a golf team. What is the name of the coffee stand located on campus? Some of you guys do get coffee from there, but you don't pay attention.
Yeah, it's in TAC.
So Blazer Beans, Blazer Brew, CC Coffee, or iBean? Yes, it's called iBean Espresso Mini Donuts. Gerald runs it. He's an awesome dude. I go there all the time. He's actually fairly cheap, and support your local campus for that. Laura is still in the lead. So last one, how was the speech showcase of 2019? Was it awesome, spectacular, amazing, or incredible?
Doesn't have what I wanted on there.
What was that?
You don't want to know.
Okay. Is someone on? Okay, there. There you go. And we're gonna find out the winner, and it's Laura. So can Laura come up with her? I'm assuming it's her with her phone, and oh, it's my friend Laura. So you're gonna buy me a coffee with it?
Oh yeah, there's a prize for the Kahoot winner.
Yeah, it was the 10. I said that.
You said that?
Yeah.
See, I wasn't listening again.
Well, it's because it wasn't working.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just come on stage. It's fine. Come get your
See,
gift
I wasn't
card.
the only one.
Huh?
I wasn't the only one. You can give it to her.
Here is your gift card. Okay. So I'm going to go check to see how we're doing on the tally. You good? Gonna survive?
I have to stand here?
Yes.
All right.
I'll be back.
Hello. I can't do cartwheels. Are you kidding me? Not gonna try. I may break something. and not on stage.
All right, so our talliers have finished with the audience choice and first, second, and third place. So at this time, I'd like to welcome all top 10 contestants on the stage.
Great job,
I would just
guys.
like to say that you guys all had really awesome speeches, and I'm very proud of each and every one of you. You did amazing and did great work. And congratulations on even being top 10. All right, at this time, I'd like to welcome Allie Legs, Skyhart Yantis, and Jeff McQuarrie to help me present awards. So while they're working their way up, I'm going to have Cheyenne Meyer, the president of the club, hand out everybody's certificate for even making top 10, because even though it may not seem like a huge deal, out of a campus of a couple thousand, these people are the top 10 speakers on our campus, and that's amazing. So let's give them a round of applause again. All right, and I'm going to step out of the way so all you parents can get pictures of your proud children. All right, so first we're going to do our audience choice, the one voted on by you guys. So I'd like to welcome Jeff McQuarrie to present that award for us.
You know, we haven't taken the time to acknowledge the fact that a lot of these folks behind us here are seniors in high school or graduating from CC right now, and they've got, you guys remember what it's like to be a senior in high school, how busy it is? And they took the time out to do this. How cool is that? Is it cool? And I'm going to go ahead and tell you who your choice was, but I just want to say there was, I think, 3 people that didn't know the answer to who the speech club advisor was. I'd like to see you after the... Okay. This is the Audience Choice Award. It reminds me when as a kid, I always used to, in sports, I always got the Coach's Award, and I always thought that was like a consolation prize. And then as I got older, I realized that to be chosen by your coaches as the guy was actually a real honor. And so I think this is a huge honor. And you chose this person. Can you please give it up for Michael Hoskinson?
All right, so I'll be representing our third place choice. I'd like to thank Awards West also for helping us print these beautiful trophies. They look amazing, and I'm very happy with how they turned out. But our third place winner is somebody who has sought a lot of help with their speech. They worked more than I could even imagine. Every day they were in the prose room getting help, just trying to make their speech as perfect as they could. And so I'd like to welcome Jacob Kinswa for our third place.
So we had a lot of speakers tonight, and I think it takes a lot of courage to be up on stage, because back in 2017, I myself competed, and surprisingly, I won first place. So tonight, the winner for second place is Ben Gorwin.
So I won the 2018 speaking showcase, and I am honestly super excited about who won tonight. I've taken classes with him. He's always been one of my favorite speakers. So Simon, you already know. Come on up. You won.
I will let you guys get more pictures if you want, but that concludes our showcase. Thank you guys all so much for coming out, and this was a great turnout, and I'm so happy that all of you came, and I hope you guys had a great time. Thank you so much.